Hi everyone, welcome at the opening ceremony of the very first local conference of youth in the Netherlands. Yay! And please do come in. Ah, nice, Marcel, goed zo. Yeah, that's great. I'll be co-hosting tonight with Lennart, and the whole team of the LCOY is also here, so we're just trying to do our best to represent the team as well as we can. And we are super happy that all of you are here. I see a lot of young faces. I'm really happy with that. I'll explain a little bit about what we're doing tonight and what the program is, what the role is of tonight, and then we will start the conference. So you can already see a little bit of pictures on the side. We have been working on this local conference of youth for the last half year. Only volunteers, meeting weekly, putting a lot of time and love in it, and we're really happy that we can present you with the program we have. Tonight, we will start with a speech by Lennart, which will be inspirational, motivational. And this is how I announce it. And will make you feel the fire inside that we all need to solve climate change. Afterwards, I will do a short interview with the Elderman, the wethouder of sustainability in Amsterdam, talking about the role of youth in solving sustainability problems and the challenges she has as a Elderman of sustainability. Then we will move to a panel debate with 4 youth climate leaders who have different strategies of solving climate change. That debate will focus mainly on the Netherlands. How are we going to make the youth movement on climate change in the Netherlands bigger and more impactful? Then we will move to the global scale. And Lennart will first shortly interview Marcel Beukenboom, the klimaatgezant, who just came in. And then we will move to a global panel debate, talking about the global scale, what's happening at the COP, and how we can make an impact globally. And then we're almost done. So then I will just quickly recap the night for you and talk a bit about the rest of the program. Most of that will come tomorrow at the conference itself, but I'll just explain shortly what's gonna happen. And then before we start, I have a few questions for you, because I'm very curious who is in this room. So who came from outside of Amsterdam tonight to this conference? A big applause for all of you, thank you. That's actually a lot. I'm really happy all of you are here. And this is a question I've been thinking about a lot this week. When IPCC report came out 2 weeks ago, I felt so many emotions. I felt angry, I felt frustrated, I felt many things. But a lot of politicians, they feel mainly optimistic, they feel good. So I kind of want to know what kind of feelings we have in this room. Who of you feels angry about how we're solving climate change right now? Okay, that's good, yeah. Who feels afraid sometimes? We might not be able to manage to make it. That's similar. And who feels somewhere inside still this ability that we can make a change? If you don't feel it, it's also fine, but if you do feel it, please put your hand up. Yay, that's great. If there would be no hands, I would say, okay, we're going to change that, but now we're just going to work with the feeling you already have. Now I would like to give the stage, he's already there, to Lennart.
Thanks, Lena, for the introductory words. And you might have asked these questions in a funny way, but I think it's super important that we ask them. We spent half a year, maybe even a year, to work on this. And when you go into these details of working, you sometimes forget to think about the issue. And I feel most of the time extremely angry, extremely frustrated and overwhelmed, I would say. And I mean, climate change is the topic that will affect us in the future. It is so big that we often don't know where to start, how to act. And it's already affecting a lot of people in many countries, and it will define our future. So yes, I feel afraid, and I don't want to say, like many people do in their speeches, yes, I feel optimistic, I think we can make it, I'm afraid. And this is also the feeling that we had pretty much exactly a year ago, when I and 15 other students from the Amsterdam University College went to Germany to protest at the Conference of Parties, the UN summit, where state leaders negotiate our future, where they negotiate about climate change. And we went there blindly. We just thought, hey, we have to do something. And the something, this has to be part of us. We have to be part of this something. But we had no idea what to do, so we just thought, okay, we're going to protest. And 4 of us, Jan was one of them, we kind of stumbled into this. For us, it was a side event, the Conference of Youth, organized by some young people that find themselves under the frame of Yango. And we just thought, okay, let's just go there. And I'm happy that we did, because this is the reason we are organizing this here. The Conference of Youth was, I think, a mind changer, because we saw that people are caring about it. Something that is so special about climate change is that we don't know in what direction to protest. There is no one person we can say, you are the person who's doing injustice to us. So it's going in all directions. Sometimes you forget how much is already being done about climate change. And at the Conference of Youth, you see it. There are people from all kinds of countries. People from Germany organized this conference together with people from Fiji. They are talking about topics like agriculture, but they're also talking about topics like taking shorter showers. And we also talked about how to go to a protest afterwards. And this is so important. We were there and actually realized things are moving and youth are part of this. And at this conference, these young people realized it's not just states that have to negotiate about our future, but young people have to come together as well. So we came back to Amsterdam and took this idea with us. And then a marathon started. We were 25 people after we pitched it, Lena and I, who just joined in, who said, yeah, we want to do something, so let's make this something. Let's call it LCOY. And more people joined in. And by now, I don't feel like you are joining a conference organized by us, but for me, it just feels like more and more people joined in, and we are now 100 or 150. I don't make a difference between this anymore, because I don't even know. There are so many people who just did something. Loda, you made a poster just one day, and we had people putting up posters in any kind of city. It's incredible. So yeah, LCOY, what is it? What do we want to do on this weekend? We want to show that youth are doing something. We have to feel that we are protesting in every kind of direction. We are being active in any kind of direction and feel that it's a movement. But we also want to show it to people in other countries, because this is not the only LCOY. There are 20 LCOYs going on everywhere in the world. There are people who already did it in Fiji, people from Austria who are actually here. Hendrik? Hey. 2 LCOYs in Austria, in Europe, Mexico, Argentina, a lot of other countries, one for the whole of Africa. And people there are searching for solutions. And we have to keep up this feeling that, yes, things are already moving, and look at it. So these LCOYs are this year part of a process that is called Talanoa, which is maybe a bit difficult to understand for many people, but mainly what it's about is this idea that it's not just about people making laws at the COP and we have to wait to become active, but we can start being active already. So what we want to do in this Talanoa is sharing what we are already doing, sharing stories, sharing best practices of what's already out there, looking where we want to go, taking climate change serious, not saying all the time, yes, it is something pleasant, it is difficult and we have to deal with it. And then searching strategically for solutions. This is also what we are going to do this weekend and already tonight. We are searching for solutions. We are searching for strategies of change. And this is what I want to invite you to do tonight, but also especially during the weekend. Engage in dialogues, share your feelings, connect to the questions that Lena already brought up, and then search for your role in tackling climate change in this movement, in this Dutch movement, and in this global movement that is emerging. Thanks.
And then I would like to welcome the wethouder, the alderman Marieke van Doornik, on stage. Great that you're here. I'm really happy.
I'm very happy to have been invited to come over here. It's a great inspiration to be here.
Nice, we are an inspiration. Cool.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great. So there's a lot of different actors in climate change, and recently there's been talks about the role of cities as well, that cities can be more, maybe even ambitious than local or national governments. So how do you see the role of cities in making the Paris Agreement, solving climate change?
I think that the role of cities is very important if you know that since the beginning of this century, more than 50% of the whole population is living in cities. And that means that climate change is being created in cities because we move, we consume, we use a lot of energy. So the cities are also a cause of climate change. So we're causing climate change. At the same time, often in cities, innovation is happening. Creativity is happening. There's a lot of young people living in cities, more than in other places. So it is a place where change can happen. And it's also a place where you can actually have change within your own community. You can have a smaller grid and to see if you can make sustainable circles, just with your neighbors, with your neighborhood. If you can see you have more portable energy and things like that. So I think cities are the places where the problems start, but are also the places where the solutions can be made. And look at the big cities at this moment and look how they are compared to their national governments, where we see all over the world extreme right-wing, or maybe not extreme, but right-wing governments. At the same time, we see cities stepping up and saying, if the country doesn't make laws that protect us against climate change, we will do it ourselves. And sometimes we fail. Bill de Blasio of New York put charges against the big oil companies. He lost, but he did it. He said, I'm not going to let you destroy the lives and the health of my citizens. So I do think that the voices of cities are very strong. And I think we should use that creativity and that feeling that change is needed, that is coming from cities. But it also means that cities should take on the role of innovators and dare to do things instead of waiting until others are doing that. And that's why we need you.
So you mentioned New York. Are you planning on pressing charges as well, or no? Probably not.
I think we should always look at what we can do, and I think the most important thing is that climate change is so big that you get the feeling like, what can we do?
Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that we need to understand is that everything we do can make a change.
Yeah.
Every action that you take can create a reaction that takes it further, and we can do that in cities.
Great, I like the answer. Yeah, and so you already mentioned something about the community, creating a community or a circle around in your neighborhood. Like, what concrete plans does the municipality of Amsterdam have right now on sustainability? Like, what are the plans? What are the challenges?
Well, we have very high ambitions.
Yeah. So
we say we want to reduce our carbon emissions by 2030 by 55%. And by 2050 by 95%. So that's quite a lot. And we want to be a circular city by 2040, so a complete circle economy. And what I'm doing right now as deputy mayor is we're setting our goals, which are pretty high. And so we're very clear on what we want, but we don't know how we're going to get there, because we need everybody. We need the companies, we need the people living here, we need the schools, we need the bigger industries, we need everybody to get there. So we are setting a route map, but we're not so we have the direction where we want to go, but we don't know exactly how we're going to go there. So we take that route map, we go into the city and we say, how are we going to do this together, and what do you want to do? So we're actually challenging everybody and saying, how are we going to do this together? And in the end, after I think a consultation or a co-creation that we're doing with the city, by the end of next year, we will have a local climate agreement where everybody is not only committed to reach that goal, but also has already written down what they are going to do in order to reach that. So that's how we want to take that on. I think our biggest challenge that we're having by doing so is that climate change or climate action will eventually be paid by the people less off. Because we know that climate change is or climate action costs a lot of money. And if we're going to have a complete energy transition, that is, that's why all the fuss is about. Nobody wants to pay for it. And at the end of the day, the people with the less money will have to pay for it. So I think inequality there is inequality caused by climate change. And we need to make sure that it doesn't go further. And actually, I think that looking at an energy transition and really start building a circular economy is also a way of making a big system change that also can create an equalizer. So that actually we're also having a huge social change by taking on this climate action and energy transition as a catalyzer of getting social change. Because it's the techniques how to solve climate change most of them are there. But we need behavioral change. And we need a system change because the way we are producing and consuming in this world is destroying the earth. So we need to get to another economy, and we need to get to have this huge change in society. And if we use it well, we can actually have a better world.
Nice. So you would agree with when we're demonstrating with the system change, not climate change?
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's
we
great.
need a climate.
Yeah.
We need a system change. Absolutely.
Nice. Good. Yeah. And so you already talked about having this roadmap and really wanting input from everyone, all different kinds of actors. So we're sitting here together and the rest of the weekend with a lot of very bright, ambitious young people. Like, is there any way and in what ways that the youth can help the municipality reach its goals?
You're already doing that by being here today and by showing your commitment. And I think one of the things that the youth is doing and should be keep on doing is holding us, the older generation, accountable. Because we are destroying your future. And we are holding back to what we are used to, the way we're producing, the way we're consuming. We think we have to give up something to have this system change. We have to give up some of the comfort that we have in our lives to go for that change. And you have to hold us accountable and saying, if you don't change, you are you're taking away my future. Because that's what we're doing. So hold us accountable and, of course, come with all these nice, innovative, great ideas that a lot of young people have. But it comes from the idea that it's hard for my generation to change because this is what we're used to. And luckily, you are not that used to it. So you can show us that there's another way of doing things. And give your energy and your positive feeling like how we can change the world. And keep on addressing us if we do it wrong.
Yeah. We'll do that, I think.
Okay, yeah. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Marieke.
Okay.
A big applause for Marieke van Doorning. And then it's time for our big panel discussion. And I would like to welcome on stage 4 people. I see 2 of them. I'm looking for the other ones. I think they came in later. We have tonight 4 wonderful ladies for you. There is Talisa from Code Rood. A big applause. We have Kautar from the Groene Muslims, the Green Muslims. Big applause. And then Linde, I'm looking for you. Yeah, Linde from the Jonge Klimaatbeweging. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big chair, huh? Yeah. And then Fleur, I'm looking for Fleur. No. Fleur, please. No, I think Fleur's not here, but then we'll just do it with the 3 of you. That's fine. Okay, a big applause for all 3 ladies. So we've invited 3 people who are already very active in the climate change movement to talk about a very important subject. And that is, if you want to become active, what strategy do you choose? How will we increase, how will we scale up this movement? There's loads of different ways. And I will let them introduce themselves a bit by answering the first main question for this debate. Well, not a debate, a dialogue. You don't have to kill each other. So the first question is, how can the Netherlands transition much faster and reach the climate goals? And I'll just start with you, Linde, and then move to the other sides, and they can give a short statement also introducing themselves.
Is it on? Yeah, it's on. Great. So my name is Linde. I'm the chair of the Jonge Klimaatbeweging, or the Young Climate Movement in the Netherlands. And to answer your question, what I think we really need right now is, we talked about it before, like a roadmap, a clear goal that we can strive towards to. And I think that young people are really essential into forming that goal. Because what we do is we try to influence climate policy by talking to the government and giving voice to youth in that. And we work together with more than 55 youth organizations. And our experience is that young people really think in a vastly different way about the climate issues that we're facing right now than the older generation does. And I think this different way of thinking, this innovation, that is the kind of things that we really need to in order to change the system and in order to change the way that we're living and working and breathing right now. And I also think that young people show a certain type of courage that the older generation tends to maybe have lost somewhere on the way, and maybe even the audacity to speak up and be able to say it is about our future and we want to have a say in it, and we need to have a climate policy that is really ambitious in order to achieve the goals that we're striving to. For example, the IPCC report that came out a few weeks ago already stated that if we are doing right now what the countries have committed to in the Paris Agreement, we're not doing enough. And I think young people really have to play a huge role in that in order to influence policies by showing that it has to be more ambitious, and in what way with innovation we can do that.
Yeah, that's clear, and it links together well also with Marike's story. Yeah, and you, Kouter? You have to. I think there's. Yeah.
We'll share. I think it's fine. My name is Kouter Bouchalikt. I'm the president of Green Muslims, and what we do is that starting from Islamic principles, working towards a sustainable society. So we use actually like really, really old principles to fight a really new problem, and I think that it's important to use as many different ways to tackle this problem as possible, because when we talk about different strategies, I think we need everybody. Like, I'm really happy to be here with a young group of different people, but I think we need people from different backgrounds, from different social economics stages, from different ages as well. And one thing I see is that in a way, we don't have all those differences yet in the movement. And I think that's a pity, because we need all different people, because otherwise this problem is way too big to solve. And like you said, we need to show with all different people how important this is, because I think we may do a lot with bottom-up and grassroots movements. That's something I do as well, and I really believe in that. It gives lots of energy. But at some point, we need, like on a national level, we need policy, we need legislation, we need those big companies to move as well. So for me, it's important to always keep those things in mind as well. Like, let's keep doing this kind of things on a local level. Let's keep organizing conferences. Let's keep sharing best practices and use as many different stories as possible, like I do from religion, and you have different beautiful stories as well. But we also need to keep in mind that we need politics as well, legislation, and how to get other peoples to move as well, and not forget about that. So I think that's the main answer I would give for now.
Great. Tali.
Thank you. So my name is Talisa, and I'm an activist with the activist collective Go the Road. So we use civil disobedience as a tactic to shut down the fossil fuel industry and to shut down fossil fuel infrastructure. And so for your question about what do we need to speed up this transition, I think the first thing is that we need to stop giving a seat at the table to fossil fuel companies, to the fossil fuel industry, to industries that we know pollute and destroy. And beyond just not giving them a seat at the table, we need to really rethink the way that our government follows or serves the interests of economics, of industry. We need to kind of go beyond just saying that we can, at least I don't necessarily think that we can all sit at the table and make solutions together, because I think that there's certain people in this world who are more responsible for the problems that we're facing, and I don't think that those people should necessarily be sitting at the table with us when we're talking about solutions. These solutions need to be grassroots, they need to be led by communities, they need to be informed by indigenous perspectives, they need to be informed by decolonial perspectives, and they need to go beyond just questioning the fossil fuel industry, but questioning the system that allows the fossil fuel industry to exist. And so I think that I see direct action and things like civil disobedience as one way that we put that pressure on the governments to basically take the chair away from these industries that keep sitting at the table and keep dictating the direction in which we are going. And I think that's kind of something really important that we need to do. And as young people, we kind of have that fire and the energy to be able to put that pressure and to be able to go and shut down industries and say, we no longer want you operating. So I think that's our biggest role.
So it's great because I already hear a similar like fire and passion in your stories, but a difference in strategies, like a combination of strategies, of stories, and a bit of lobbying, a bit of civil disobedience. And that's also the question, like the second question and the more core part. So could you tell a bit more about what strategies you are choosing and what kind of the theory of change is behind this? Like if everyone would do this, then we really get the change. So maybe, we can do 1-1-1, or I don't know. Or you just started a bit, yeah.
Is it on? Yeah. Oh, I don't really hear it, but it's okay. Okay, thanks. What I think our strategy is more to engage in a conversation. So the word together is something that we really often use because we believe that in order to make that change, you need different types of things to put that change in works. And I think, like you said as well, that we need everyone to contribute to that, because if we don't, then people will feel left behind, won't be able to follow the transition, and then we won't be able to make it, because if we don't do it together, then it's just not going to work. So that's the kind of the strategy that we build on. So from the perspective that in order to go through this energy transition and go through the changes that we need to go through, which are phenomenal, we need to include everyone in order to make that change, even and especially the companies that are polluting right now. And we believe, as the Jonge Klimaatbeweging, that young people don't only deserve a seat at the table because it's about our future, but also can really speed up the process by thinking differently and by thinking of solutions that are also future-proof. Because what we feel is happening right now in climate policies is that those solutions are thought up by people that are 50 plus, and they sometimes think in a certain way that young people have already changed. So in that way, certain solutions are being thought up and are being put into place when that's not the way that young people are thinking anymore. So for example, we see that young people care a lot about public transport and about sharing a car, for example, while the older generation tends to value individual car use more. And in that way, solutions are being put in place that aren't really applicable to young people anymore. So that's the kind of theory of change that we think. So we want to include everyone and do it together with as multiple people, young people as possible, but also from other generations, because we really need each other. They need our innovation, and we need their experience.
Yeah.
So
I like the example, and I'm also curious, like for people in the room. So this example is the idea that politicians now think of making cars electric, and then you say that you've learned from youth that they actually want better public transport, sharing cars. So who in this room feels more like having an electric car than having public transport? No one. Really? Okay, the other way around.
This
Maybe
proves my point.
Not putting up your hands. Who feels more like having better public transport than having the electric car? Everyone. Okay, so it's right. Okay, cool. Now we've confirmed it in this room as well. Great. So there's like under your theory of change, there's this idea that we need everyone, and that also companies that Talisa just named are able to take part in these conversations.
And they have to. I think.
So I think that might be one, and that's also from my own experience, one of the theories of change where people differ to what extent they can actually take part in these tables.
And also I think that we need both types of strategies to be able to really inflict the change. So I think we both need the activism, but also the lobbying in order to make that change. And I think it's really good that different kind of people are focusing on different kind of strategies, because I think we need both types, or even more types, also creating awareness, etc., in order to really get the change that we're looking for.
Yeah, so you're also happy with the Code Rood?
Yes, definitely.
Cool. Kautar,
Before I proceed talking, I would like to ask a question. Who of you would call themselves a climate activist? Hands up.
Oh.
Okay. That's really interesting because even in this room, I don't see everybody put up their hands. And being part of the climate movement is part of identity as well. And one thing I notice in my work with Green Muslims is I know many different people. And if I would ask them, are you a climate activist? They would say no. But if I would look at what they do and how they believe we should treat the planet, they would say, I am a climate activist, actually. So I think we should really think about the labels we use and about the ways we try to get people part of this movement. Because what we see is when I talk to people about religion and about changing the world and make it a better place, to use that phrase, we talk about God as well. We talk about taking responsibility. We talk about these small things people can do in their daily lives. And if we talk about theory of change and what's the idea behind that, I think it's really important to make climate change something that taps into personal experiences, because people at some point need to feel and understand what we're talking about, even if they don't come to places like these or talks like these, because at some point it's really personal. And if we don't know how to deal with that, we might lose a lot of people. And I think that's also what you said. So I think we should be aware of that, and I think we should be careful in using names like the Green Movement. I mean, I do that as well myself, but what I see is sometimes it works like the way you don't want it to work because people don't feel part of it. So I think we need the names to say what we are doing, but we also need to be aware of that in addressing other people and try to use different languages and different stories, and that's what we do. So when I talk to someone from an Islamic background, I talk about God and taking responsibility. When I talk with someone from Greenpeace, I don't necessarily talk about God, but we still can talk about taking responsibility. And I can talk with you about taking responsibility as well. So I think we should be aware of those different layers we have in stories and try to tap into personal experiences constantly. So I think that will help us to make this movement as big as possible and eventually reach all those different people we really need.
You can clap. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you've both said, and also I agree with you that we also need a diversity of tactics. So I think I was speaking more from my role within Go the Road, and kind of our theory of change being one more that our politics have for a very long time kind of been holding hands with industry, and our theory of change is that we can no longer wait for the politics to realize and catch up that what they are doing perhaps is not the best, to put it lightly, but that there's a responsibility for us to take things into our own hands. And so civil disobedience in a way cuts through that pattern of the state and of politics just kind of reproducing the same old things, because it interrupts that, and it says, okay, you could keep going on, but we are going to stop business as usual. We are going to put ourselves in your way, and if you want us to move out of your way, you have to listen to what we're saying. So I think part of the theory of change with Go the Road is basically that, is putting our bodies in the way of these industries, and doing that also from a perspective of climate justice, which I think you've tapped on both, like in different elements of not, at least from the Go the Road perspective, of not just talking about fossil fuels and talking about carbon and pollution, but actually understanding the social and political and economic impacts of climate change, and what that means for people and what that means for people's livelihoods and people's cultures and people's identities. And so approaching the problem from a climate justice analysis that says, for example, in Groningen, we're not just against gas, because natural gas is a very polluting substance, and it's not a renewable energy source. But we're also against gas because gas extraction requires the displacement of people. It requires the displacement of people that are more likely to be already marginalized, to be working class people, to be people who are farmers, to be people who work on the land. And when we look at Groningen, that's a lot of what has happened. People maybe haven't been displaced, but their houses have been destroyed. And a lot of the people who are living through that are working class people who don't have the means to take on the government, to take on the NAM. So then our theory of change is that what we then do is to try to put our bodies on the line, and in that way raise awareness about what the issue is, to put pressure on politics so that groups like, for example, the Jongere Klimaatbeweging or the Groene Moslims can in their own way continue to put pressure on politics and to build within community. So
So there's a certain interaction between making space more in a putting stress on the people in power, and then like other people like the Jongere Klimaatbeweging or Groene Muslims stepping into that space. Yeah. And so from I hear in all of your stories the idea that we need multiple strategies and we need everything. And I think like the room full of people, and that's what we will talk about this weekend, is also about finding multiple strategies. But if you could if you would be the minister president of the youth climate movement, which is a contradiction in words, but kind of leading it, like how will we scale up this movement in the next 4 or 5 years? What will that be? A mix of strategies? Will it be one thing? That's the main question I'm thinking about daily. Like, how will we scale up all the efforts that are already done? Not an easy question, but you can answer it. I feel it.
What I think is that we, in our own ways, need to scale up what we are doing. Like, we all have our own area of expertise in that sense, and a certain strategy that we're most comfortable with and that we feel most closest to. And I think we need to expand that and expand the movements that are doing that. And like we said before, there's a lot of interaction between putting certain themes on the map and putting certain things on the agenda, and then from our perspective, more sort of internally trying to build up upon that. So I think we really need to keep doing that, and I think the responsibility of climate movements is to engage as much people as possible. So try to expand the bubble, because I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes when I talk about how climate change is affecting our lives, and a lot of people in the Netherlands also don't really know about it, which I think is also a really big issue, is that we don't keep in mind that we don't need to preach to the choir all the time, and that we need to expand the people that are active in this, and then let them choose their own way in which they want to be active in it. If they want to focus more on the diversity, if they want to focus on putting things on the agenda, putting more stress on it, or like we do, try to talk to people in the government and try to change climate policies from within. So I think that's the best way to do it. Just keep doing what you love and what you're passionate about, and the strategy you feel is the most effective, and try to expand that, and also include as much young people and as much people in general as possible in the fight against climate change.
Yeah. So the choir we have now, we're going to make a lot bigger and then preach to them.
Yes,
yeah.
that would be great.
Cool.
Thank you. I would totally agree with that. I really believe in strengthening each other, and in the meantime investing in your own strategy. My colleague Margreet van Es said something really beautiful. She said the fact that sustainability and fighting climate change is able to get so many different people together from so many different backgrounds, from so many different ideas, is something really beautiful in itself. So I think that's something we should treasure as well and appreciate, and on the same hand try to work together as much as possible, because you know things I don't know, and vice versa. So I think that's really beautiful about getting together and making this movement, to use that word, as diverse as possible, because we don't only need the people, we need the strategies as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you've both said, and I definitely think that we need a mix of strategies. When you asked the question, there was 2 words that came kind of to my head. One of them being solidarity. So I think we often think about solidarity kind of as this, like, I don't know, this weird street. Sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes the other way. But I think we need to be doing more solidarity work. That includes solidarity within the climate movement, which I think is so broad. There's corners of the climate movement that often don't even meet, which is odd. So I think we need to be doing more solidarity work within, which is strengthening each other's strategies. But at the same time, we also need to be doing more solidarity work out. And so that's solidarity work with other movements, with anti-racism movements, feminist movements, movements against Islamophobia, movements against xenophobia. We need to be doing this solidarity work with other movements because kind of you were mentioning this before, climate change is going to impact all of us. It's going to impact people at a personal level, but also in society, we're in different positions. It's going to impact us differently. And so if we recognize that, there's a value in creating solidarity with movements that are doing different work than us because they are also, if they are marginalized, and for example, the anti-racism movement, if people of color are marginalized in society, they will be marginalized when it comes to dealing with climate change. And so they have a need for us to address their needs, in a sense. And so we need to be doing more solidarity work as the climate movement that goes outward. And I think also intersectionality is one way in which we also scale this up, of like looking beyond just what are the what's the fossil fuel industry doing, what are structures of power that allow the fossil fuel industry to exist? And so I think all of these questions that we need to be asking ourselves, which are really big questions, but luckily we're young, which means we have our whole lives to ask ourselves these questions and figure this out. But I think if we want to scale up in the coming years, we need to get serious about doing this. We need to get serious about meeting each other, about connecting, about supporting each other's work, and like what you guys were saying, really scaling up what we're doing.
Yeah, so I also see that as not only an invitation, but also an assignment to all of us to, after this COY, see how we can maybe attend other conferences or events on completely different themes that are still related to the same power structures that allow climate change to happen. Yeah, that's at least the assignment I feel in my heart for doing this after this. I think I would love to talk to you a lot more, but I think we have to move on. So a big applause for Talisa, Kautar, and Linde. And now Lennart.
Thanks so much, you three. I thought it was really interesting. And Lena, you said, let's continue this after the LCOY. Let's continue this at the LCOY. That's the assignment. Try to go beyond these comfortable zones during this weekend and have these conversations. For me, it was really enlightening. We make a small jump now, because LCOYs are not just about change here in the Netherlands, but it's about change globally. So we invited a panel, but also Marcel Boykeboom, the climate envoy of the Netherlands. Maybe, you can already come on stage. A small introduction. And I actually also have a question. This is spontaneous because I'm just curious. Who here feels comfortable with, who knows something about the UN climate processes? All right. Okay. Let's have this part of this ceremony to get an insight into how the climate processes work also in the UN. In 2015, the Paris Agreement was made, and people always say, okay, there we agreed what are the goals. Now we are in the implementation phase. We need climate action, a term that we already heard. So how do we actually reach this 1.5 degrees? How do we create change? And now the question is, how does the UN come into this? And Marcel Boykeboom, this is your role also as a climate envoy. I wonder, what do you think is the role of the COP that is going to happen in Poland? And are you confident that it will bring upon the change that we need?
Those are many difficult questions already. I think first of all, you started with looking at what's going on internationally, globally, in the Netherlands, in your own personal life, saying, I feel anger, I'm sometimes feeling being overwhelmed. I'm a bit overwhelmed as well here, coming in here and feeling the energy that is in this room, but also this last panel was such a high level, so I have to applaud you, first of all, for what you have said, emotion and what you're doing here. And listening to you brings back a few memories of what we did here just a few months ago in this very same room. And the agenda that you lay out for this weekend is an enormous agenda, but I think you just pointed to the right question. So I think you have a good task ahead of you the next 2 days, but I have the feeling that you're going to talk about the right things. Do these fit into the global agenda? Yes. And the UN and the UN-led process leading from COP to COP, and that has started decades ago already. We are going to COP24. And COP, as you perhaps know, the acronym stands for a Conference of the Parties. That is a conference of nations, of governments, that have signed the initial climate agreements in 1992. But that's something I think you should keep in the back of your minds as well. It's just governments. And I heard that in your conversation earlier on as well. This is not only about governments anymore. So yes, governments have to do their part, and that's what we're going to do in December. We are going to talk and to negotiate on implementation of the Paris Agreement. Actually also talk about implementation of the original UN Framework Convention on Climate Change that was signed in 1992. And we are going to talk about mechanisms to measure each other's actions. We are going to talk about transparency, about financing, about difficult things that are called the Paris Agreement Workbook and Rulebook. That is something I think I should not bother you with, because it's necessary, we have to do it. But at the same time, having said that this is something that governments have signed, and also realizing that it's mainly others that have to implement it, your movement is so important, because that is what we collectively have to do. We have to motivate others that can sometimes not be held accountable by democratic means, because it is a consumer-producer relation, or it is a something in your neighborhood, or whatever connection you might have. And that from a government's perspective, and from a meeting of governments like the one in Poland in a few weeks' time, we cannot accomplish. So it's much broader than that, and I think we have to look at it like that as well. And that goes back to the agenda that you have just set out. What kind of different means can we use and can we employ to make that change happen? And that is a super important agenda.
Okay, thanks. Still, there is Yango. There is the youth representation, and they try to influence these processes. So I wonder, how can they do this effectively? You mentioned it's a world where the governments meet, but how can the youth influence this meaningfully, that they can actually have an impact in this area?
I think I'm going to repeat the words of the alderman that the evening started with. She said something like, hold us accountable. And she used it in an intergenerational term. This is also something that you could do in a place like Katowice, is hold governments accountable and put on pressure on what's going on there. Because if you look at it, especially when you're on the inside, you see that it's interest at play. And it's interest, and you mentioned the word system. The system as it is, we need to change, and you have mentioned that in different ways. But changing a system from within is necessary, but at the same time you also have to put pressure on it from the outside, otherwise it's not going to change. It's too solid to do that. And I'm operating within the system while in Katowice, and I'm trying to do my best, and other governments try to do their best, but still it is within the system. So that is where you can play a part as LCOY and see what's going on, understand what's going on, see what's on the agenda, what kind of movement you want to create. And you know you have many friends inside, so we can help you also with pointing at what are the most important issues, where do we see that a little push can help. That is what your role can be. And do not underestimate the power that you have, because many people are listening to what's being said by your generation. So that is, I think, the more numbers you come out in, the more power you have. So what you did last year was a very good start. And if I see how many people are here, that's a good follow-up. And if you can have your voices heard in Katowice, it will definitely help.
Okay, thanks. I have a last question. You mentioned we have friends inside that we can work with together. How can this concretely look like?
Well, first of all, well, you have my name and you have my phone number. So I'm inside and I'm sitting at those tables. Not all of them, because it's an enormous factory of different tables and different topics. And different constructions of interests. But what we do and what we are used to do as the Dutch delegation is also take youth representatives up in the delegation. So we do have colleagues of yours in the team. That is one thing. We do, of course, also talk to you in the run-up to it. So if you have any ideas, and many of you I know because that's a habit that I have and that I enjoy because of the value that you bring to the table. And that is what we continue to do. And of course, you cannot all be inside. You need to have accreditation, you need to have time, you need to have money. And I can tell you, all hotel rooms have been booked for years in advance already, so it's going to be difficult. But do not let that stop you. Even put up a tent in Katowice, because it will help. But it's what did I say?
It's a tent camp. Oh yeah.
Make a camp.
Watch out.
Start camping out there. It's going to be cold, but it's nevertheless that might help. No, but seriously, it's go over the agenda and see where influence might be needed, but also do not lose sight of the bigger picture. Because what I said in the beginning, this is a system that has been put in place within the UN 25 years ago, and that is kind of the motions that we go through. And I cannot predict how many more COPs we will have, but I'm sure we will reach 30 and even 35. Fine, we need to do that because it's valuable things are happening inside. But there's also another reality, and that is beyond the walls of the UN, beyond the walls of COPs and other meetings that we have internationally, and that is where the real change will take place. And what many people often observe is that the change is probably not going to come from governments and the public sector. It's the governments have to play catch up because things in society are going at a much more rapid pace than we can ever predict. And there are many examples, and you mentioned a few. And new regulation has to be put in place. But if we struggle, for example, in the EU to come up with a new emission reduction target, still at 40% in 2030, and we see that reality has caught up with us already because we are moving towards 45 reduction already. And you see that within the halls of the EU, still many countries say, well, we shouldn't raise it too high because it's going to be difficult, but reality has caught up already. So, and that reality is us collectively. So if you keep on doing that, those official quarters will have to play catch up.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Most welcome, and good luck.
I would like to continue this discussion with youth perspectives. We have two people invited who have a lot of experience of working at the COPs, but also just in other international networks. This is Victor Jose and Serena Bashal. Victor worked for many years with Yango, the organization, the head organization of the LCOYs, and now also works with Climates, a youth network that was founded in France and has working together with a lot of branches in different countries, also in Austria again. Serena works with the UK Youth Climate Coalition and also has a lot of experience again working with Yango, especially in the human rights working group in Yango. Thanks for being here. I want to ask you first the same question that I also asked Marcel. Do you think that the COPs are going to save us, and why do we still need them?
Hello? So,
Yeah, it's
it's working. Okay. So, are COPs going to save us? COP is a catalyst. It's going to speed up the process and get things going. The global intersectional movement and the people taking action are eventually what are going to save us. So ultimately, it's the people acting upon the outcomes of the COP that will save us. So 2 weeks a year, we get a lot of media attention, a lot of big-name politicians all in one place talking about the environment. These COPs, they show our progress. We're gradually becoming more inclusive, despite it being a really privileged space. So COP is really geared towards the global north, such as with the languages. Last year it was in Bonn, despite being hosted by Fiji, things like that. So the COP is a vital part of the process and an absolutely crucial platform which allows global leaders as well as activists, researchers, etc. to all come together and tackle climate change. For example, after 2012, when people started gearing up towards the Paris COP, that was when the World Summit Sustainable Development Partnerships first started. So there were 300 in 2012, and now there's over 2,000. This is a result of the COP inspiring grassroots action. So the COPs are tangible. They're creating so much awareness of climate change in the environment. You don't need to be a climate activist to know about the COP that happened in Paris, COP21, and where the Paris Agreement was formed. So COP is creating a lot of momentum with regards to the Paris Agreement and just climate activism in general. So it's also important to bear in mind that it's around 90 companies that are responsible for nearly 2/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions. It's terrible. We need to hold them accountable. So after the Paris Agreement, there was suddenly a lot of really big companies kind of being like, oh no, there are a lot of regulations that we now have to adapt for. So a lot of these companies started to make the space to become market leaders. So they may be economically motivated, but they are influenced politically. So yeah, from COPs we can educate the public and we can really monitor these stakeholders' progress. So the COP gives us an area where normal people can really interact with these higher stake government people and pass on this message, which is really hard to convey most of the time. This message is focused on climate change, is focused on bringing climate change to the forefront of people's minds. If these stake actors can find an agreement at these higher levels at the COPs, then we can find agreements at the lower levels within our communities. Plus, we've solved climate problems before with these international conferences, such as the Montreal Protocol in 1987, helping to solve problems with the ozone layer.
Okay, thanks, Serena. Victor, same question.
Yes, it was addressed from many perspectives by now, and also Mr. Beukeboom mentioned that this whole thing started in 1992, which is also my birth year. So we can say that they've been negotiating over climate for over 23 years, which is, yeah, I question whether we should put all the stakes in there. I rather take the stakes of my diet and tell everyone why I do that before I would put all those stakes in the COP. But as Serena highlighted, it does accelerate processes and initiatives, not necessarily the UN political process that happens at the COP, but those processes, those development, financing, and capacity building processes that can lever change, also small scale, but also large scale. And also when it comes to youth, these initiatives are present at the COP. And looking at you, I see a generation which we call at Climates the climate generation, and it is the generation in whose life climate change was picked up as a topic, and I also believe it is the generation that can turn this tide and step up to this challenge. And COP is definitely an opportunity and the channel to bring that in.
Okay, thanks. Victor, I would actually like to follow up because we heard now you said COP is important, but still a lot of skepticism. I wonder, why do we need then, you've worked with climates, it's another form of global cooperation amongst young people. Why do we need this cooperation then so urgently?
As an individual, you can do change, behavior change. We know that. It does influence others, but to get this kind of policy change, economic change, we need to organize and organize collectively. And when it comes to global negotiations, these groups, such as Climates or such as the groups that are represented today here, and we'll hopefully hear more about them during this weekend, are the gateway to feed this input that we have into the global process. And this is where the collective action means the role, means the determining role. Because as an individual, you can't take part in these processes, but as part of a group, you can, and that is easy. And Yango is an accessible and open space for everyone. And you don't need to put a camp in Katowice. It's going to be freaking cold. You can do this remotely. That's the wonderful thing about this movement. I'm working with people I have never seen in my life, and they do the input into the processes that we do.
Okay, thanks, you too. Still, I think, on the global level, it is always this danger to be super abstract. I think for us three, it might, we have things in our minds, but how does this concretely look like? How do young people work at these global processes? How are they represented there?
So we are represented because we are the ones who are going to be affected. We're represented by the negotiators being more likely to listen to us, and we are their moral influence. We are tomorrow's climate leaders, so it's really crucial to inform absolutely everyone. So we get invited to speak at the COP. We do different things: side events, actions, bilaterals, which is kind of like a meeting between two parties, so you and someone else. Interviews, interventions in negotiations. We may not have the political power, but we do get to have meetings with really important people. For example, in the subsidiary body meeting that happened in Bangkok in September, which I was at. Were you there? In Bangkok?
No, it wasn't. I'm an NGO. I don't go to Bangkok.
So we had a meeting with the chair of the G77, who is the Egyptian head of delegation. And we also had a meeting with Patricia Espinosa, who's the executive secretary for the UNFCCC. So these were really, really important. We really got to tell them things and get our messages across. However, it was a bit more of a question and answer session and less of a discussion. But still, we got to say important things. We got that opportunity to address these important people. We get to affect how the negotiators think. For example, if Youngo is having an action in this COP space and a negotiator is on their way to a meeting and they see this action that's in the forefront of their mind, they're now going to go to their meeting thinking about everything they just saw in this action. They're going to negotiate it with it at the forefront of their mind. So yeah, climate change really does affect everyone. By Youngo and young people and the international youth movement being at these conferences, we're building a movement just by being there. We're building that global movement. In turn, that's building the regional and local movement. Negotiators may not listen to just one person, but they will listen to thousands and thousands of people all shouting the same thing at them. Yeah.
Yeah. This is how you can imagine youth participation at the COP. And the thing is, for example, there was this last session. Basically, parties were quite late with the work up towards the COP, so they had to squeeze in another session into in between. However, as said, this is a country-driven process, party-driven, just like ADE going on right now.
Don't tell them.
Thanks for coming here, by the way. And in many cases, the NGOs, the civil society representatives, are not necessarily led into these meetings. So that's when you would jump in and get the negotiators in between the sessions and come up with policy suggestions. That's what we do at Youngo. We draft out the policy, the text that's going to be negotiated over, and try to feed that to the negotiators informally as Youngo. And also there's this other way of doing actions, which we also do, which is basically just demonstrations inside the COP. And these can be picked up by press and seen by many. We always have several cool Youngo actions, demonstrations at the COPs. Or also works in another way. For example, there's like 25,000 people coming to the COP. So there's a lot of people who don't necessarily have roles, because it's not that easy to get a meaningful task at the COP. It's like you get lost in the process. So we have all these COP tourists that come to the COP and are there, and perhaps they go home and their stories get picked up by their community. Like, these guys were at the COP, oh my God, the UN process. And this can and this does inspire others. When you get to talk, like, I was at the UN. Oh, damn, what was happening there? And it can inspire others. So, and again, into these processes, you can jump in online remotely through Youngo, through the Climate Action Network. I encourage you to subscribe to the emailing list of the Climate Action Network, because that's where all the things is happening.
Okay, thanks. I mean, the LCOYs are, if you think about it also, like, even if not everyone who's here participates directly in the COP, without the COPs, these LCOYs wouldn't exist. This network between LCOYs wouldn't exist if there was not this point that they would be working to. So I think that's a similar thing. Also, what is very interesting, I see kind of the link between what we heard earlier in the Dutch discussion, that this connection between lobbying and action outside, that not everyone here, of course, has to become a lobbyist at the COP, but still these actions here are in the end supporting the position of young people, I guess, at the COP. I would like to close this panel with a final question to you both. I would like you to imagine, we had the same question before. Let's say everyone in this room would follow your words. You could say, okay, this is the one action we should focus on to really make a change. What is it? What should we do, like, to accelerate climate action?
Build a strong intersectional movement. Tackling climate change and achieving climate justice is all about building that strong intersectional inclusive movement. Climate change affects absolutely everyone, regardless of what class you are, what gender you are, what race you are. Yeah, so if you... sorry.
Take your time.
Yeah, so actually think about every single action that you're doing. Demand change, lead by example. On a personal level, look at every single thing that you do. Educate yourself, find out, look into the food you're eating, look into the clothes you're buying. Where is it coming from? Who's producing it? Who's marketing it? Vote with your wallet. So if you stop giving money to a specific corporation or a brand, they're going to fold. They're not going to be able to sell their products anymore, which is what we want with the unethical produce. So join an organization, maybe even Youngo. You can join Youngo as an individual, or you can join as part of an organization. Join this global youth network so that your everyday personal actions can connect with everyone else's everyday personal actions and build that strong movement that we all need so badly. So yeah, we are very important in this space because we are tomorrow's climate leaders, whether we like it or not. We need to normalize this, talk about it with your friends, put it on your social media, buy products from people. For example, the Malaysian youth delegation, who are a delegation in Youngo, are currently selling reusable straws, like made of metal or whatever. So you can buy these things, support them, just get the word out. Also, lastly, stay positive. The amount of times I've cried over a depressing story or a depressing anecdote at a conference, it's just really depressing. It's gloomy, it's sad, but stay positive. We are gonna do it. Just keep on fighting. Woo!
Yes, very comprehensive, and I think most of you, you look like you know how to do climate action, and the behavior change is a determining aspect, especially if you can demonstrate that to others, and not just demonstrate, but tell why you do that, and I think many of us here. Maybe many of you here may not see climate change as your niche, but I believe you are all concerned about where we are heading, where this global instability, tension that we have is heading, this huge growing gap between poor and rich, between the policy and the science, between economy, population, who's driving who? Fake news and ultra fake news. and I see climate change as the opportunity to get our world and get our values back to shape again. And maybe we will end up with a warm climate which we have to adapt to. But I do see it as an opportunity to get all these things fixed, or at least to get onto the path of fixing these global issues. And to get your word in, there's so many ways to communicate and get this narrative out. You can use health, coming from the health perspective, saying that climate change is going to affect people's health. It's not just about the health of the polar bears. It's also our health and how our health systems adapt to this change. Or by incentivizing it, going through the economic gains. It is cheaper to do climate action today than to adapt to it in the future. And some people some big dogs, big companies will catch up on this. Or just thinking about equity among people, equity among regions. Climate change will just accelerate that and exacerbate that, and it is the opportunity to solve these things.
Thank you very much, you two. And I can also just follow up on what Victor said. Like during the conference, we will have a lot of sessions where you can get insights into this. And I really say it might not be the most sexy way of dealing with climate change, but it gives a lot. And in the build-up of this local conference of youth, we had a lot of connections to these people in the other local conference of youth, and we learned a lot from their stories and from their experience. And it's worth having a look at it. Check it out at the conference.
Cool. So we're almost done. No, oh, that's sad. We're almost done. We're going to end tonight already in a little bit, but we still have a few things we want to talk to you about. Main thing is the program this weekend. What's going to happen? And I also don't know. We made this event tonight open to anyone, but who in this room is going to the whole conference of youth this weekend? Okay, this information is relevant for most of you. That's great. So tonight we've had the opening ceremony here, and we will continue with a more relaxed evening program. It will happen at AUC. There will be a potluck dinner. We will have a documentary screening. We will have a jam session, just so that you guys can get to know each other, and you are allowed to speak about climate change tonight. So that's great. Normally my friends are pretty angry if I mess up the night by talking about climate change again. But tonight, we can. There's people who won't get mad at you. And then tomorrow, you're all invited from 7:30, no, from 8 onwards for the breakfast. We will be there with the breakfast. You don't have to be there at 8. You can be there at 8. And later on, we will start with the program. That will start at 9 with the regional meetups. Then at 10, the sessions will start. That will last until 4. And then we will have Talanoa sessions. And Talanoa is shortly mentioned by Leonard. It's this tradition from Fiji in which you focus on dialogue instead of discussion. So to make sure you guys have a way, you people have a way to process what you've learned during the day and maybe take next steps, strategize about what you can do. The same thing will happen on Sunday, and we will close off with a closing ceremony that will happen at AUC itself. So this is the kind of broad overview, and I feel Leonard wants to say something.
Yeah. You did pretty well, but you forgot one thing.
Pretty well, thank you.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Actually 2, but I think one is important. Whoever wants to, we will walk together back to the science park. You can take public transport, but you can also walk with us. We can have time to talk already there. It's 3 to 4 kilometers. We will meet outside. Join us for that. And whoever wants to, tomorrow at 7:30, we will go running, plugging actually, collecting plastic while running. So whoever is, I don't know, good in getting up early in the morning can join Bethany, and then we will go running, 7:30. Okay.
I have more messages. Yeah, there was like a comma, not a point. We are doing this conference this weekend, but we also, of course, want to reach a broader audience with the things we're doing. And I want to invite, I don't know where you're sitting. Yeah, no, on stage to talk a bit about the campaign we thought of, I Act for Climate.
Good evening, everyone.
Applause, woo, yay!
It's really wonderful to see so many faces tonight. So aside from the LCOY event, we decided to, why not showcase what we do, and why not invite you personally, but also as a group, to showcase to the world what we do here and what you're going to do after, thanks to the LCOY baggage. And that's why we decided to set up the campaign I Act for Climate. And so basically, what we ask you to do is right now to take out your phone. Come on, go on. Take out your phone, take a picture of what's happening, and share the hashtag and share the movement. And so it's this idea of saying we're fully implicated personally, but also as a group. And we invite you throughout the whole conference to share the work that you're doing via this hashtag. We want to create a globalized action, local actions everywhere, led by youth agency.
Woo! Great. And then a bit more on how we organize the thing. I think the partner slide, yes, perfect. So we've been organizing this conference with a big team of volunteers, and we've already mentioned that. But we've also been able to do this as a student starting team because a lot of people helped us. And one of the partners is Pakhuis de Zwijger. We're already in them, so we're very grateful for being able to use this room. A big applause for Pakhuis. Thank you. Thank you upstairs. Yay, Barbara. And then the other partners are mainly people like the people you've seen on stage. So it's from the Jonge Klimaatbeweging, the people who have been supporting us from the start on giving input on what our conference could be about and how we can fit into the rest of the movement. We have Kunstsmaak, who's making the catering this weekend, so we're really happy with them. Biological, local grown food, so no meat.
AUC, our university college, that lets us use the room for free. Very important.
And money. Yeah, we got some money from. Where are they? Oh shit!
They are not on there.
Oh yeah, they're behind. You know the stones. There's a logo. No, we got some funding from Stichting Toekenningen, so we're really happy with that. We started as a non-stichting, as a group of people. We applied to many funds, and we're really happy with funds to actually give people a chance who just started out with things. So these are the people we are super happy with and grateful for. So one last applause. Yay, grateful. Woo. And then I think that's more of the end of tonight. So we've been preparing a program with over 60 sessions on very many different themes. And I think some of you will actually give a session, all of you will go to sessions. And our program team has been working very hard, staying in touch with all these people, making sure that's arranged. So I'm really happy with what we can offer to you. That will happen the whole weekend. But what's going to happen after the COY really depends on yourself. Lennart went a year ago to the COY in Bonn, and there's only one Lennart that started this COY a year later. Some of you might not be from the Netherlands, are from a different country, so this COY could maybe be the inspiration for you to start one next year. But it could also be that you meet the people that you will set up climate actions with, and it might not even happen during a session, but tonight, that you talk with someone. It could also be that you meet people that will actually direct you to a career that will help you to work on this topic. But those conversations are not offered by us. So we're offering a program, we're offering you chances to engage with the materials and with the science of climate change. And then our assignment to you is take that chance seriously. Because while we're happy, clappy, and very happy with this conference, the topic is not that happy, and we're not there yet. So we really want you to take this chance seriously, to not be distracted by the idea that we don't have power, or we are youth, or we can't make an impact, because we can. We just have to take the chances we have serious, meet each other, and see what we're gonna do with that. And I think on that note, if Lennart is good with that,
I think that's really good,
I would like to invite you to the foyer for some drinks, register, and then see you the rest of the conference.